So, yesterday we heard a story. It was about the day we call Pentecost, and about how God made it possible for the disciples to speak, even to people that didn't speak their own language, and tell them about God's love and how people's lives began to change. And today's story is about one of those people. There was a man who was very angry and mean, and his name was Saul. He looks angry and mean in that drawing, I think. And he didn't believe in Jesus. And he was upset at all the changes that the disciples were bringing about in Jerusalem. He said, we've got our ways of doing things. Why are they doing them this way? We know how to handle people. We know how to treat people. Why are they telling us we're not doing it right? We know who the people we like are, and we know the people we don't like, and we're not going to like our enemies. And the disciples were saying, well, yeah, you should. Maybe not like them, but love them. There's a difference. People don't always like each other, but even then they can still care about them. Well, Saul got so angry about this. He said, they're upsetting everything. I'm going to just catch these people. We'll throw them into jail and we'll deal with them later. And he went off to a town called Damascus, where he heard that there were a bunch of these disciples that were talking about Jesus. Well, on the way to Damascus, something happened. Saul had a vision. All of a sudden, he heard somebody calling his name, Saul, Saul! And he looked up in the sky, and there was this bright, bright, bright light. And the voice was coming from the center of the light. And he said, who are you? And the light said, I'm Jesus, and you're persecuting me. Persecuting means like bullying. I'm Jesus, and you're bullying me. And just so you know, I'm real. Well, at that point, Saul got knocked to the ground. And from the bright light, his eyes were completely blind. He didn't know what to do. Somebody took him and led him into Jerusalem. And when he got into Jerusalem, they led him to a house where he was expected, and there would be somebody to watch after him. But he was blind. He was mixed up. He wasn't talking or eating. And people were worried about him. But the people that he was coming to arrest, well, they had a completely different reaction. There was a man in that town whose name was Ananias, and he was a follower of Jesus. And Jesus spoke to him and said, I want you to go to find Saul, and I want you to heal him. And Ananias said, what do you mean? He's out to get us, you know that. He wants to stop you, you know that. And he wants us all arrested, you know that. And if he's blind, he can't do that, you know that too. And Jesus spoke to him and said, just go ahead and do it. Remember how when Jesus was walking around the earth, he was telling us to love our enemies and to do good to people who hurt us? Here was an exact example of it. Exact. Ananias, he said, he might be your enemy. You got to go help him. Well, Ananias did. He went and he laid his hands on him and he prayed with him, and he said, I'm sent here by Jesus to pray that you might get your sight back. And Paul opened up his eyes and he could see again. I called him Paul, didn't I there? He was still called Saul. But after his eyes opened up, And this whole experience, he realized that Jesus was real. And when he found that his eyesight was restored by somebody who was his enemy praying for him, he realized he wasn't really his enemy. And that the love that Jesus had taught to Ananias was better than the anger and the hate that he had had. And he even changed his name from Saul to Paul because he said, I'm like a new person. And Paul ended up going all over the place and telling all sorts of people about Jesus' love and showing it in all kinds of ways. And he got beaten up a lot, and he always forgave. And in fact, a lot of the letters that he wrote to his friends ended up becoming part of the Bible. Well, a little secret. I think that after we finish reading one more story tomorrow night, I'm going to go back and start reading a bigger book. And it's written for older people too. Well, primarily for older people. But I don't think kids would mind hearing this story. And it's long. But it's about Paul and the letters that he wrote. It's by a man named Walter Wangerin. It's called Paul. And it fills in a lot of the things that are in the New Testament, the second half of the Bible, that the children's Bible leaves out. And I'm going to try using that. That'll be our stories for a while. So this Paul, his life changed. And his story about his life changing changed a lot of people's lives. And the thing is, the letters that he wrote, they still change a whole lot of people's lives. So we'll hear more about that when the time comes. So tomorrow night, we'll have one more story that's from the children's Bible. And then we'll go from there. Good night, everybody.